I love what I do because I help people know more about themselves, either as individuals or as an organization. And that, I think, is the greatest gift I could ever do, is help people bring light to who they are. And we do that through the research we're able to do, the data and the feedback surveys and analytics we're able to run. That is liberating, because once you know more about yourself, then you can start using that information to help you be more so you can do more. And you'll hear that recurring theme from me: be more so you can do more. Is really about what we're up to and what we're about here. Is helping people be more aware, more conscious of their creative talents and their art of the possible, so that they too can move into this creative space.
Welcome to the Amani Experience Podcast. In this podcast, you will experience wisdom, advice, and stories from creatives all over the world. Your host is Amani Roberts, who is a DJ, music producer, professor, avid book reader, and developing salsa dancer. On the show, we love to share the stories of creative professionals, especially people who've gone from the corporate life to the creative life. Once again, welcome to the Amani Experience Podcast.
Welcome to episode 32 of the Amani Experience Podcast. For this episode, we have Chris Powell from Talmetrics joining us. Chris is a humanist. I love how he talks about, that's what he describes himself as. He's all about the people. Some of my favorite things about this episode is that I've known Chris for over 23 years. We talk a little bit about our time in Marriott. He's been a great mentor. I really appreciate him joining us on the show. And then the advice that he gives out throughout the entire show, it's pretty like silent and subtle. It doesn't knock you over the head, but it's lethal. So great advice throughout the entire show. So you might even have to listen twice to the show, but really enjoyed it. I'm going to read a quick review from iTunes. This review is from Courtney Connect. She says, this show is enjoyable to listen to. The guests are diverse and from a range of entrepreneurial and creative fields. Amani is a great host, well-spoken and concise. Thank you for that review, Courtney Connect. Remember to rate us on iTunes, give us a review. Thank you very much for listening, and to the show we go. Welcome back to the show. I'm going to read our guest today, their bio, and then we'll get to the show. Our guest today is the Chief Executive Officer of Talmetrics, Incorporated, a talent analytics and insights company that helps organizations retain employees to improve business outcomes such as retention, performance, and productivity. Prior to joining Talmetrics, our guest was the Chief Human Resource Officer for Scripps Networks Interactive, a global media and digital company. In that role, he had responsibility for leading Scripps HR talent and diversity functions. Our guest also had previous roles with Voya, formerly ING, Marriott International, Deloitte, and Northwestern University, which is alma mater. I would like to introduce Chris Powell to the Amani Experience Podcast. Welcome.
Hey, Amani, thank you for having me, my friend. Looking forward to our time together.
I am as well. Grateful for you making time for us today. We always do a geographical check-in. So right now, where are we talking from? Where are you located?
I am in Cincinnati, Ohio, home of WKRP in Cincinnati, but right in the heartland, my friend, today.
Yes. All right. And where, if I recall correctly, you grew up somewhere else besides Cincinnati.
You are correct. I am originally from Memphis, Tennessee, where I was raised. Yep.
All right.
Been many moons since I lived there, but that's where I'm from.
All right. For sure. And then if you were to summarize Chris Powell in 30 seconds or less, how would you summarize yourself?
Oh, that was a good question. One of my favorite ways of summarizing myself, I am a humanist, which means I believe in the power and the potential of people. And I'm all about the expansion of people. So that's me in a nutshell in 30 seconds or less.
A humanist. I like that word. I'm going to look it up.
Mm-hmm.
So you started.
Somebody's got to care.
Yes, sir. So you started your career working for Ford Motors. If I recall correctly, you were selling cars to dealers way back in the day, kind of early 90s.
Oh my, man, don't date me too bad here, but yes. Yeah, my first job out of college, I was a sales and marketing manager for Ford, which was a dream job for me because I'm a car head. And being a kid straight out of college and your first job, you're working for a car company and you get a company car every 4 months, a brand new one. Who wouldn't want that gig?
I agree. So if you're a car head, what are you driving right now?
Not a Ford. Knock on Ford, but right now I'm driving a Audi SQ5. So,
oh, lovely.
Yeah, he's got a little power and a little kick to it. I'm loving it.
Nice. And then after Ford, you made your way to Northwestern, to Deloitte, then Marriott. Now that's where we met, Marriott International, in probably around 95, 96, I want to say. Shout out. Yeah, shout out to Priscilla. I believe Priscilla Johnson, now Priscilla Holman, is the person who introduced me to you. So that was Marriott.
Yes,
and then you went to ING, which is, or known as Voya, and then Scripps. And then talk to us about how you went from Scripps. And then I believe you started your own company. Was it Blackboard HR, which then transformed to Talmetrics?
Yeah, it was Black Book HR, and we transformed the company and converted the name over to Talmetrics about just almost 2 years ago.
And if I recall, you made a pivot from consulting to now more of the people space, correct?
Yes. So originally, Black Book HR was really focused around consulting in the space, and then we decided about 3 years ago that we wanted to move more into the technology aspect of that so that we could scale and grow the business. And so here we are 3 years later and still at it and making the magic happen.
Nice. And when was it that you decided, I'm going to leave kind of the corporate atmosphere and go out into the creative world and try this entrepreneurial life out?
Oh my God. So to tell you the story, Amani, because I'm actually coming up on 5 years of being out of corporate America, which is interesting. It was about 2012. I was at Scripps and had an amazing ride of being a part of that company and that culture and growing that business from, an $800 million business to a $2.5 billion business at the time when I left. And that was an amazing ride working with brands like HGTV and Food Network and Travel Channel, which I'm all about that in my personal life. So it was like a good connection for me. But it was about my 5th year in the job. And it was the first time ever in my career where there wasn't a bigger job than the one I had for what I was good at, right? So here I am, the corporate head of human resources, the chair I had coveted for many, many moons. I said, when I got in that chair, I'm going to do all these things. And I did. But what I realized, I still wanted to grow and wanted new challenges. And I said, well, I can't seem to manifest that here at Scripps. Well, maybe I should look at other opportunities outside of Scripps. And I did. And what I discovered was it felt like Groundhog Day for so many of these other organizations I looked at. And I said, I just don't want to repeat what I've already done. I want some new challenges. And so instead of jumping into something, I set it up so that I could transition and give my CEO at Scripps time to find a replacement for me. And I took almost a year off. In search of what I really was motivated and got excited about. And what I got excited about was creating and expanding things. And people were like, well, Chris, what kind of things? I said, well, it doesn't really matter as long as there's an opportunity to either create something or expand something that already is. And I was coming back off of a overnight hiking trip in the Smoky Mountains. I almost felt like I was Moses going up in the mountain to get my tablets. I get a call from Chris Osage, the guy who started Black Book HR, and he said, hey, I got this great new product I want to show you to see if you're interested in buying it. And then I was like, well, unfortunately, I'm not in chair to buy it, but I'm curious to see what you got. And so I flew up here to Cincinnati to meet with him just because I was curious, because that's part of, I think, of being an entrepreneur is that you've got to have a high degree of curiosity. And so I came up and I said, hey, man, this looks really good. I can't buy it, but I'm happy to be an advisor to you to help you sell it. And I wasn't, just out of the kindness of my heart while I was trying to figure out my own thing. So long story short was I came up as an advisor, got hooked on the Kool-Aid, got really excited that there was an opportunity to nurture and expand and grow something. And it was in a space that I had a passion around, is around helping employees and organizations be better so they can do more and be higher performance. So that was right up my sweet spot. And then literally I invested in the business, and then the board and the founder were like, hey, you actually have passion for the space, you know the space, and you've got a vision for this business. And they asked me to join as the CEO 4 years ago. So here I am, growing and scaling and building and ebbing and flowing a business, my friend.
Yes, yes. So we could rewind and say, go back 4 years to when you first started. Yeah. What kind of advice would you give yourself knowing what you know now?
Ooh, wow, that's a good question. I would say look, listen, and learn more versus immediately trying to act. There's so much power, Amani, in being still, because that's when you can actually witness things versus going head in first and just start doing things. Because every organization, every business, how big, how small, they are organisms and they have nuances about them. And I was so eager to get started. I didn't follow some of my own advice of having been a guy who's renovated homes, is live in the home first before you start redecorating.
Very well said. Yes, sir. So if we go back to that theme of look, listen, and learn, what do you feel is important for creative professionals such as yourself, myself? What's important for us to succeed in today's business environment?
I think one is clarity, right? So making sure that you're clear about the why, the what, and the why you're doing what you're doing. The second thing is ensuring that you've got the resilience, both physically and mentally, to endure and to endure the journey. You and I started off before we started recording and saying, hey, entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. And I think it's also not for the folks who are not as in good, physical well-being is relative. Trust me, I'm over here talking about I need to lose my winter 20. You know what I mean? So I think, the whole piece around resilience, both physical and mental endurance, and then the whole piece around clarity, I think those are two important factors for any entrepreneur, because there's some really high highs and could be some really low lows, and you've got to know how to self-manage yourself through those highs and lows.
Good. I love that you spoke about resilience. What have you done to really kind of, I want to say, grow that muscle? Because resilience can be kind of acquired over time and wisdom. So what have you done to grow that muscle, so to speak?
Oh, wow, man. That's been an interesting one. So for over the last 4 years, I've really started developing my meditation practice that I put in place for myself. Daily meditation, and I also do group work as well, so that I can get more in tune with myself and understand that we are our best counsel when we can listen and hear ourselves when we're quiet. And so I've spent a lot of time over the last 4 years learning how to quiet my mind, so I can bring that clarity and develop that resiliency that it requires for me to keep at it, right?
Yeah. I think once we get off the line, you're going to have to give me some advice on quieting my mind, because I suffer from the same thing.
I mean, unfortunately, it's and I don't say this in the clinical sense, but it is a disease of our society these days of being not able to do that, right? Because we're getting bombarded with stuff all day, every day. And we want to effort our lives versus being and living our lives. And I think that's the unique difference now, being on this side of the table, not being inside of an organization, but building one, is like, all right, let's make sure that we keep that at the forefront. People have to be first before they can do anything.
Yeah, definitely. A good segue would be, I've read in the past where you've talked about the art of the possible and then relationships matter. Maybe you could speak to us about both those kind of statements, what they mean to you and how it applies to really being still and being resilient.
Yeah, I mean, so the art of the possible is one of my favorite ones because anytime that you get two people, heck, it doesn't even needs to be two people. It could be a person. Back to me being a humanist and believing in the potential and the promise of us as humans. We are a walking quantum physics experiment, right? And so quantum physics is the science of possibilities. And our thoughts become things. And so if we're able to quiet our minds, right, we can actually hear what we're thinking and feeling. And from there, I think we can create and be more to do more. And so for me, it's been, the whole art of the possible is an extension of me talking about being a humanist, right? It's like, all right, how do I help individuals and organizations and teams through the work we do here at Talmetrics be able to tap into their art of the possible? Many moons ago, I watched a documentary called What the Bleep Do We Know? And they talked about the art of the possible of quantum physics and the science of possibilities. And it just stuck with me. I'm like, yes, that's what we're about as humans, is the possibilities. We create them. So that's my take on the art of on the art of the possible.
Good. And then we're probably like over 4 years, maybe 5 years into your entrepreneurial journey. When did you realize that, okay, this is going to work? It's, there's no turning back now. We're going to jump both feet in. When was kind of the turning point in your entrepreneurial career?
Actually, you know what? You're probably going to find this interesting. It actually was this past December. So December of 2017. So just about almost 4 years in, I'm like, oh, this is a real thing. It's just a hobby, but this is a real thing that we're building here. And part of it was, being very forthcoming here. I had an opportunity, a well-known, established software tech company that many of us know and use every day, was interested in exploring some opportunities with me. And initially I was like, I'm not looking for a job. I've got a job. I got a business I'm owning and running. I don't need a job. But it was one of those calls you get and you're like, I got to go check it out just because.
Yes.
Great opportunity, great company. But what I realized was that my opportunity to explore the art of the possible would have been hindered, not completely, but it would have been narrowed to the point that it wouldn't have been expanding and exciting for me. And I told him that. I said, the role isn't big enough or the scope isn't big enough. I couldn't do and be and bring what I wanted to bring to that role because of the size of the organization and the complexity of it. And I was just like, no, I don't want to do that. And that just further clarified my preference for what I'm doing. And so that's when I tell people, I reaffirm that, hey, I'm doing what I want to do in a way that I want to do it. And I think that's most important because in the world of, being in HR all these years, you realize that most people are disengaged or unhappy with work because they don't get to control how they show up in the role. They don't get to control the type of work they get to work on sometimes, in most cases. And so imagine not feeling like you have control. That's worse than purgatory. Just just take me out. I just couldn't do that again. I couldn't.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying ever, never, ever, but I just can't see it. I don't foresee it in my future. And I've been wrong on my future before. So don't have me eat crow 10 years from now. But 10 years from now, I hope to be sitting on somebody's beach.
There you go. I'm with you there for sure. Once you get control, it's very hard to give it back.
Right.
Right. So
the control, Amani, on your point right there, the control is not necessarily on things outside of me. It's the control of me, in these environments. And that's what's been so liberating and freeing is that I get to be. Peter Tillich wrote a book called The Courage to Be, and I get to be. And through that, I'm able to do more and be more. And so I'm loving it, man.
Yeah. It sounds like it. That's good. Tell us, why do you love what you do? You might have already spoken about it, but tell us again then.
Well, part of it is I love what I do because I help people know more about themselves, either as individuals or as an organization. And that, I think, is the greatest gift I could ever do, is help people bring light to who they are. And we do that through the research we're able to do, the data and the feedback surveys and analytics we're able to run. That is liberating, because once you know more about yourself, then you can start using that information to help you be more so you can do more. And you'll hear that recurring theme from me: be more so you can do more. Is really about what we're up to and what we're about here, is
right.
Helping people be more aware, more conscious of their creative talents and their art of the possible, so that they too can move into this creative space. Because a lot of it has to go back to my early days in organizational psychology in college, was around understanding Maslow's hierarchy. Not the bottom two layers, but the two layers at closer to the base are really around creating places where people can feel safe and where people can belong. And then if people can feel safe and they feel like they can belong, this is when they can start unleashing their creative talents inside of an organization. And unfortunately, so many people don't feel like they're safe, and so many more people don't feel like they belong. So how can that happen if those two basic needs aren't being met? And that's what we help organizations and individuals figure out, is what are those needs of safety and what are those needs around belonging, so that, you can have more people being in the creative space like we are, like you are, like I am, inside organizations. Because not everybody's got the wherewithal to start a business and to run one. And some people like being a part of teams, and that's cool too. Right.
Why do you think many people struggle with feeling safe and feeling like they belong?
Well, I think there are a couple of things that are at the core of that: fear and trust. People fear. We've been taught in so many societies around the world to fear others, be it around race, be it around gender, be it around sexual orientation, classism, you name the ism, somebody's fearing it, right? And so that creates, if you are in any of those isms of race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, et cetera, and you're not in the majority, or you don't feel like it's a place that is for you, you don't feel safe there, because you don't feel safe bringing your whole self. And so you compartmentalize yourself, and so you reduce yourself. You put yourself in a good friend of mine shared this with me the other day, and I just love it. Do I have to be a lesser God to be in your world? Mm-hmm. And that's God with a small g, people, in case anybody's out there like, well, my God, he's being blasphemous. No, small g.
Yes, we get you. Wow, that's heavy.
Yeah. And so I think for a lot of people, that's the case. They put themselves in a box, and it doesn't feel safe to come out of that box. And then God forbid that they can't get to a place, if they're in that box, how do you even feel like you belong if you know you're in a box?
Yeah. Now we continue on. You mentioned fear. I've heard a definition of fear I like, which is false evidence appearing real. How would you define fear?
Actually, you stole it, because that's how I use that.
Great mind.
Check it out. Thank you for having that on recall really fast.
Yes, sir.
I think, fear, and I do a little talk on fear as a catalyst for change and innovation. I think, fear is misunderstood, right? In some aspects, I have fear about things, but I use that fear to propel me into action, right? to propel me into evolving something or creating a better environment so I don't feel that fear anymore. I don't stay static with fear and just like, oh, I feel that forever. I don't think I have any fears that I've had forever. I've got new ones that pop up every now and then. But yeah, fear can also be that catalyst for change. Or it could be the rock you hide under. So it's really about, choice again, right? So which possibility are you going to take? The reductionist or the expander role, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I got to give credit to Les Brown for that definition. He's the one who I heard it from, and I'm borrowing it from Les.
See, thank you again, because I'm not quite sure where I heard it. So thank you for citing Les Brown for that.
Definitely. And then kind of...
Right.
kind of continuing along this theme, what is something that scares you?
Not being able to create, not being able to be, that scares me.
Yeah. Good answer.
I couldn't imagine just, no. Sorry, no.
All right. Now, the people space, human resource industry, technology industry, software industry is very crowded. How do you rise above all the noise and distinguish yourself from all of your competitors?
Well, oh my goodness. I think, yeah, you're right. The HR tech space has gotten more and more crowded. And I think technology in itself is just growing exponentially fast. Now we've got IoT, Internet of Things. I love that, right? Everything is spitting off data. Even your keypad at your office now tells you how many people are in the space and all this great stuff. So there's data like overload. And one of the things I have always said about technology is just humans, us, moving along this whole self-actualization. If you think about all of the inventions that technology, it's just us trying to either discover something or make something easier for ourselves. And that's why when everybody's talking about, well, artificial intelligence and machine learning is going to take over everything for man. Nah, I don't see it that way. Because it's the same, depending on your spiritual beliefs, we can always be in pursuit of that but it is always expanding. And so similar to technology and us as humans, we are continuing to expand and grow. So technology is always going to be following us, not us following technology. And I think that's what's gotten really confused in the marketplace is that technology is driving us, but no, we're creating the technology. And we're adapting it to us. Not that it's it's a flip of the whole thing. So for us, it's about understanding that the way we differentiate ourselves in the marketplace is, hey, yes, we've got enabling technology to help you do something more efficiently, faster, better. But at the same time, we have a service layer to help enable and equip you as an individual or a person to be able to use the technology for your advancement, not have the technology advance you. So it's kind of a model, of always being human-centered and how we think about our business. And we use technology to facilitate our business.
Yes.
So it's a bit of a flip of the model a little bit there.
I like that. Yeah. Good explanation, too. Thank you for explaining that. How has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for later success? Do you have a favorite failure of yours?
Do I have a favorite failure of mine? Ooh, yeah. So this is going to sound crazy because I've been in HR and talent business, but we too, who are in the space, sometimes make bad hires.
This is true.
And one of mine was I fell in love with somebody's experience and knowledge, but failed to listen and look for their character. And that one, occasionally it comes back to me like always listen for character and mindset over accomplishments.
Yeah.
And not to say that accomplishments aren't important, but mindset and character matter more.
Agreed. Now, keep going. I'm sorry.
Good. Mm-hmm.
And I was going to say, with respect to kind of character and mindset, how do you, when you're interviewing someone and for potential hiring, how do you understand and get to know that in a quick amount of time?
Yeah. So a mindset, it's really about really listening, setting the stage for them to tell you a story about something where you can ascertain some insights around their mindset versus you asking questions, get them to tell you a story. And from there, and I'm probably a little bit more skilled than most, is that you can ascertain where somebody's mindset is. And in our business, it's around a couple of things that we look for is your mindset around understanding being a humanist, right? Because if you're just a pure technologist, that's not going to work well in our business because to my previous example I talked about. And if you don't apply what I call some form of a look, listen, and learn approach, that's going to be problematic as well because we're also in service to our customers. So you have to listen to understand. As Stephen Covey would say in one of his books, seek first to understand and then to be understood. And so, there's certain nuances that you listen for in conversations with people about mindset and character. And, similarly, you're just asking me a question about, what's a failure? How comfortable are you talking about your failure? You could tell I'm pretty transparent. I'm like, well, yeah, I could come up with more if you wanted me to, but I find my failures help me further refine my preferences. And so even though I had that bad experience of hiring somebody who wasn't the right fit for us, out of that came more clarity around what I prefer in terms of character and mindset than I probably had going in, because I assumed because you're in the space of working with people and organizations that you actually gave a damn about people in the organization. And that's not always true, right? So back to my look, listen, and learn.
Yeah. Yeah. Great theme. Great way to put it. So speaking of kind of character and mindset, based on your experience, what characteristics make up a great leader, whether it be in a small, medium, or large size organization? Well,
and this is funny. You got good questions for me today. Amani, I was at Northwestern and I was with Powell Tillich, who was the former head of the tennis program at Northwestern. And he said something. I asked him what made for a great coach. And he said, somebody who cares. And I was like, you know what? That also applies to leadership. That also applies to a business. Somebody who cares, somebody who gives a hoot about what's happening or what needs to happen, I think is probably one of the core characteristics of a entrepreneur or a business leader or just people in general. You got to care, because if you don't care, why in the world are you doing what you're doing?
Yeah, preach. I want to say, can we get an amen on a Monday? But maybe we'll stop with that. Okay, talk to us. How do you handle your critics? Because I know with you being in the industry for over 20 years, you probably have run into some critics. How do you handle them?
It's funny. I really, let your haters become your motivators kind of thing.
Yes, preach on, yes.
I don't spend a lot of time on them, to be honest. And I know they're out there, but the mission and the purpose of what I'm doing is bigger than any critic that could ever come my way about what we're up to and what I'm up to in my life, and having some conviction about who I am and what I do. So, I'm like, yeah, it's like Spanky on the Little Rascals. I know I'm going way back. You may remember, if you've ever watched the Little Rascals, Spanky used to say, and you can't see me doing this right now, Monty, but he used to point his two thumbs at himself and say, "You're not going to get me." And that's how I feel about my critic. Your words, whatever you're saying out there about me, positive or, in this case, negative, is not going to stop me from doing what I'm doing. At best, it's going to help me refine what I'm doing. And so that's kind of how I handle the critics.
Yeah, yes, sir. I'm gonna pull this Spanky clip from YouTube and put it in the show notes so everyone can understand what you just said.
You're not gonna get.
All right. Tell us about the darkest time in your life, how you got through that, and what did you learn from that experience?
Oh man. Oh man, I would say it's interesting. As high as my highs have been here with this business, I've had some of my darkest moments where, I'm like, all right, I got payroll to meet, right? And I'm like, all right, how's this going to come together? I don't know where the money's going to come from, and blah 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 blah. Those are dark moments because I take my role as the leader here as being the guy responsible for going out, to get new business or find capital or whatever it is that's going to keep the doors open, right? And early on, let's just say there were some scary moments of where I was like, accounts receivables are slow, customers aren't paying as fast as you want, but I got a payroll and I've got, folks on the team who need to pay their mortgages and, babysitters and, they need to pay for their lives. And that was dark for me because I had not had to have that level of responsibility before. And part of it was just, leaning on my own faith and conviction that, hey, if there's a will, back to being a humanist, the art of the possible, there is a way. There is no single one way of doing anything. And I had to be more open. And I think that's what got me out of the darkness was not getting locked in on a way, but being open to the way. Right. To bring forth, in this case, money to cover payroll, some years ago. So knock on wood, 4+ years later, people get paid.
Yes. Very important.
Yes, it is. It is.
Cool.
A novel.
Who was the most influential person for you growing up?
Who? Influential. Probably a combination of my grandmother and my grandfather on my mother's side. Both of them, my grandfather only had like a 5th grade education, but was one of the wisest men I've ever known. He used to always talk about, hey, I'm all in support of you getting all the book sense and book knowledge in the world, Chris. But make sure you've got some common sense to help you navigate the world.
Yes.
Which I've always considered myself being more of a pragmatist. And I think that's mostly, but I'm a bookhead too. I'm a voracious reader. But I also think about, all right, how do I apply this knowledge to life? And I think that's where the common sense came in from my grandfather. And then my grandmother was this consummate cheerleader, championing and supporting and encouraging me to explore, which I'm still a bit of an explorer. I travel the world and mostly not just for pleasure, but for curiosity of understanding cultures and religious beliefs and traditions and things of sort. So I would say those two.
Nice.
Two folks.
Yeah. And I'm sure your grandfather would tell you that common sense is not that common.
Yes, I could hear him saying that.
Wow. So I know I read in an article where you said that one of the biggest challenges that people have is getting past the fear of connecting with people that we work with. Why do you feel that's the case?
I mean, so many of us need to be affirmed so many of us need affirmation from others, right? And the fear of rejection is one of the biggest fears most people have of not being accepted. And I think that gets in the way, right? And I think social media has amplified that for people. Oh, you didn't like my quote I stated. Why didn't you like my quote? I mean, like, Dak, I didn't even read your quote. Sorry.
It didn't come up on my feed. It's not my fault. It's Facebook's fault.
Right. the affirmation, even some of my closest friends, I'm like, you send me a text, you know how many text messages I get? If it's not on my top screen, I might miss it. So there's this need for affirmation and acceptance of others. I think it just creates this paralyzing fear in people sometimes on connecting with others.
Okay.
And in particular, if you don't know them, right? You've met people who could friend a paint a white wall. They could, become friends with a wall of paint. And then there are other people who can't get beyond their own shadow.
Yeah.
In some cases.
Yeah. All right. Well said. Well said. We're going to go back to when you were 21 years old. I believe you're still in Chicago, right? At Northwestern?
Yes.
So we're going to talk to 21-year-old Chris and give him some advice. What advice would you share with 21-year-old Chris?
Ooh, stop rushing.
Oh, okay. Tell us a little more about that. I like that.
Oh my God! At 21, I was on a timeline. I had to have this by this date. I needed to be doing this by here. I need to achieve this by that. And what the advice I would give myself: focus more on how you want to feel and the vision of you, and then let life start to bring that to you and fill in for you. Versus me trying to effort and time box everything in my life. I mean, I was a time boxer like crazy. Like, I needed to be a vice president before I turned 30, and I needed da-da-da-da-da-da-da,
Yes.
blase.
Yes, I can relate.
I was on a crazy-ass timeline in my life, and I sit back and I was like, what was the rush for? Because if you think about it, at 21, even if I was going to retire at 65, that's 44 years, right?
Right.
Like, that's a lot of time to do a lot of things. Why are you trying to time box everything? And what I didn't know is that I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah, we never do.
No. And my saying today is I know less today than I did yesterday.
Oh, you explain that to us. I like that.
Right. Think about it. So I'll go back to, I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to science, right? So all of the quantum physicists and scientists out there today are saying that the world and the universe is expanding at a much faster rate than they ever thought. Because I remember I was a kid, Pluto was like the big discovery. And now they're talking about there's a whole nother series of galaxies beyond Pluto and da-da-da-da. So if the universe is expanding at a faster rate, there's more new knowledge out there every day about something I have no knowledge of. So that's why I say I know less today than I did yesterday because of that.
Yes, makes sense. I like it.
Because the world isn't getting smaller. Our universe isn't getting smaller. It is expanding. And so I don't know, when people try to ascribe to me that, Chris, you're an expert, I'm like, no. I said, I know a lot about some things, but I would not call myself an expert because there's always new knowledge or new perspective or a new angle on something I haven't thought about. And thank God that is, because that's what drives innovation and creates opportunities for folks like you and all the other folks that you've interviewed over time to step out there and create something new. That's what's so great about this time and space that we're in right now.
Yeah,
is that technology democratized so much of innovation. The barriers, I'm not saying they all are gone, but the barriers to be able to create are like far less than they were, 20 years ago. Think about if you were a musician, as you would know, you can produce your own music. You don't have to go to anybody's studio. You could do that.
Yes.
Right in your own home.
You just need a computer.
Right?
Just need a laptop, if that.
Yeah, you need to probably buy the expensive software, but outside of that,
So true. Very well said.
Think about it now. You could, even if you didn't have the money and you could get access to a car, even you now on Uber, you don't even need to have your own car. You can rent a car and still drive Uber to get the money to buy the software so you can do these things. I mean, like the opportunity, the art of the possible to achieve and pursue your dreams is more in our favor than ever before. And I think it will continue to be in our favor as long as we're open to not getting locked in on a single way of achieving the dream.
There we go. I would ask you, what is holding back so many people from actually pursuing their dreams and going for it with the barriers to entry being so low?
They're listening to their critics too much. People saying, "Oh, you can't do that because you need to do this and you need to know this person," and da 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 da. You know, the yak yak yak, as I call it.
Yeah.
I'm like,
all right.
you know,
What would
I'm like,
what is the one lesson in life that took you the longest to learn?
listen to myself.
Yeah. Enough said. We don't need to continue with that one. We'll go on to the next one. Every great person has a sentence. What is your sentence? My sentence would be, I help people unlock their creativity by teaching them how to DJ. What is your sentence?
Oh man, I got so many.
Well, give us one or two or three. We'll take a few.
Well, the one I've kind of, I've talked about it. I'm a humanist, helping people be more to do more.
There we go. Done. Boom.
Yep.
You mentioned a few habits before, but maybe you can kind of explain them to us. What is one or two or three new habits you've added to your daily routine in the past year or so that have been most beneficial?
Well, one I mentioned earlier is the practice of meditation and going inside of self. And and that's been helpful because it is in my morning meditation practice, I set forth my intention of the kind of day I want to create for myself. And I got to tell you, when I do that, it's a powerful thing because the day unfolds in some really miraculous kind of ways for me. And so I have found that to be a really good practice for me. And I also do an evening meditation so that while I'm sleeping, my subconscious and my mind and my spirit can start lining up all of the cooperative components to bring forth what I want to bring forth that next day. And I think another one of my practices is saying thank you and being grateful. I at some point in my life and career, I forgot to say thank you and be grateful. And now I'm in a place I get it, and that's something I always say, is when my team members leave work and I'm still here, I always say thank you for all that you've done for us today. I mean, because life is short, and if you're leaving out of this place and you've brought in your best talent and your best thoughts to support and our customers in their journey, I need to be grateful for that. I need to be thankful for that, right? So those are a couple of practices that I know I hadn't always adhered to or subscribed to in the earlier parts of my career because I thought it was all based on my merit. And, hey, all you need to know is my output. All the rest of the stuff is effortless. You need a thing. Oh, my God. No, why? Who needs that? But I understand it now. I've got that perspective.
Good.
Now.
Great stuff. Now, you mentioned before that you're a voracious reader. We are also voracious readers here on the Amani Experience podcast. If there is 1, 2, or 3 books that you feel people should stop what they're doing right now and start to read them right away, what books would you recommend?
So right now I'm reading Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck, Dweck. It's about talking about the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset.
Yeah.
And I've got my whole team reading that one.
Great book.
Right now. Yeah, we're going to do a book club on it next month. So I'm excited about that. And then some personal stuff. My favorite books are Untethered Soul. And Jesus, why can't I call the author's name?
We can look it
but
up.
It's Untethered Soul, and then The Power of Awareness are the other 2 books that are in my fan favorite. And actually, except for the Growth Mindset book, the other 2 books I've probably read 6 or 7 times in the last 3 or 4 years.
Wow, that's a lot of time.
That's every time I open it up, there's some new insight that comes from it, that I could apply to my life. I don't say my work life or personal life because it's all just one life to my life.
Yeah, great recommendations. We'll put those in the show notes. Now, we met when we were both working for Marriott, and I understand that you feel that Marriott had some of the best company culture you've ever experienced. Why was that the case?
Well, a couple of things. Bill Marriott is a humanist, and his father was a humanist. And, you've heard the quote time and time again. If you, and I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit, if you invest in your people, if you take care of your employees, they'll take care of your guests. And that's a humanist statement, right? And because it's a service industry, Marriott understood that service is delivered through people. Yeah, of course, you've got a building and equipment and all that stuff. But the actual interaction happens through people. And that was a fascinating culture to be a part of. I had the opportunity of working for Steve Marriott on a culture initiative for the company, which gave me great insights of understanding the family and their perspective on the business, which then helped me better understand of how to create, employee programs and policies and practices to create positive, productive, inclusive environments and cultures so that people could be, so that they could do more.
Yes, I agree with you. Like, I grew up in Marriott over 20 years, so I lived through what you just described.
Yeah, and I mean, to this very day, it's foundational. I mean, even this business I am in was shaped by my experience at Marriott. And I think the passion and the energy I bring to it is because I know it's possible. I lived it, right? I contributed to it. I helped, foster it and sustain it. And, that was a phenomenal experience, right?
Definitely. Yeah. All right. So tell people, how can they find you online, like website and what social media platforms you're active on?
Our website for the company is www.talmetrix.com. That's how you can find us about the company. And I'm active on LinkedIn. You can find me under Chris Powell, or on Twitter at Chris, XRISPOWELL, or at Talmetrix, TALMETRX. You can find us on Twitter.
Nice. So we're coming to the close of the show, but before we go, I just have to say thank you for being a guest on the show. Also, thank you for being a mentor to me. I remember I met you in like 95, 96. I was with Marriott at corporate headquarters. And then in 1997, I moved to Chicago. I did not know but one person in Chicago. My first weekend there, you were there for business, and you invited me to come with you to this restaurant called Wishbones. And we went to Wishbones, and Wishbones ended up being one of my favorite restaurants I've ever been to in my life. I go back whenever I'm in Chicago. So thank you for putting me on the Wishbones, and thank you for keeping in touch as well.
Monty, man, it is an honor to see you now, knowing you then, to see you now. I am honored to still call you a friend, and all the best, my brother.
Good. So I appreciate that. We let our guests kind of leave the show, take us home just by giving any last minute wisdom or advice. So I'll turn the microphone over to you. You can give us some advice, and we will definitely see you soon.
You got it. And so my advice to anybody and everybody in these days and times that we're in, discover you, be you, because that's the greatest gift that you can give anybody.
Thank you for listening to the Amani Experience podcast. You can check out the show notes on amaniexperience.com/podcast. Please remember to leave us a review on the platform you are listening on, and share this podcast with anyone who you feel would benefit from listening. See you soon on our next episode.